Jewish Education in Media is pleased to present L'Chaim, a program that highlights the people, issues, and events of importance to the Jewish community. Now here is your host, Rabbi Mark Golub.
I'm Mark Golub, and there are many people in the Jewish world doing wonderful, creative things for the betterment of Jewish life here in America and for the security and future well-being of the State of Israel. And most of them are not household names, whom we know all about, but they are on the front lines, and each of them is a hero of modern Jewish life to whom we owe an enormous debt of gratitude and who deserve all the kavod due to those who have devoted themselves to the Jewish people. And on this edition of L'Chaim, I have the special opportunity to introduce you to one of these heroes, Andrew Kligerman, who's involved in and committed to a myriad Jewish initiatives which help defend the State of Israel and energize Jewish life today. Let me tell you a little bit about Andrew Kligerman. After a most successful career in the insurance industry and the financial world in general, and Andrew is the former director and president of the Association of Insurance and Financial Analysts, Andrew now devotes his time and energies to Jewish concerns. Andrew is a national board member of StandWithUs and is active in combating the BDS movement that seeks to delegitimize and undermine the State of Israel. Andrew has served as co-chair of the Westchester chapter of the FIDF, the Friends of the Israel Defense Forces, and Andrew works to promote a greater understanding of the State of Israel and hosts quarterly meetings all over the place with some of the most outstanding figures on the Israeli and American scene. In addition to all Andrew has accomplished and continues to accomplish, he is a most thoughtful and lovely human being, and it is wonderful having you at this table. Thank you for joining us.
I feel so good. I want to just stop here. Yeah.
You have done remarkable work, and I want to talk to you all. But I want to start first about who the heck you are and how you become to be what you are today. You grow up where?
Grew up in New Rochelle, New York. Grew up in a Reform community.
Your parents' names?
Marilyn and Alan Kligerman.
Marilyn and Alan.
Mm-hmm.
Any siblings?
Cheryl.
Cheryl. Older or younger?
Younger.
Okay. You grew up, you said, in a Reform Jewish
community.
household?
Yes.
Do you belong to a synagogue?
Now I work with yes.
Okay.
Temple Israel of New Rochelle.
Temple Israel, very nice.
Yes.
And you had a bar mitzvah ceremony?
Right there with Rabbi Wool, who's shows up there now a little bit still.
Absolutely.
Even. Yeah.
He is an esteemed figure in the American rabbinate. Do you remember your bar mitzvah?
Very well.
What do you remember about it?
You know, I hate to kind of take this angle on it, but I wasn't so focused on the education.
Of course. You were 13 years old.
I read from, Mark, I read from the Torah. I lost my place up there, and I just made up some words, and I kept going, and everybody congratulated me on what a great job I did. I remember that vividly. But the education came later on.
Yes, we'll get to that. And it's a very honest statement. Do you know why most kids do have a bar mitzvah ceremony?
Do I know why?
Yeah, why?
Just kind of the movement into manhood. And
no, please. Did you feel you were becoming a man at 13?
No, not happening.
Why do kids have a bar mitzvah ceremony?
I hope it's not just for the festivities, because that's how I had felt at the time. And I think it was just very common in the Jewish culture.
By the way, there is some of that, but that's still not the right reason. Most people don't know. That's why I'm asking you. It gives me a chance to tell everybody. Most kids do it because their parents want them to. And I teach my students, it's a gift you're giving your parents, and if you're lucky enough to have grandparents, your grandparents. You do it because it's a gift. Okay. It can't mean to a 13-year-old what Judaism now means to you as an adult. And you're going to describe for us in a moment how you make your own transition. But you understand.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense.
Okay. So anyway, you have a bar mitzvah ceremony. and people told you they were wonderful, and
what
it was done in a
great,
Jewish
yeah.
context. That's all it's about.
Yeah.
You had a lovely party, but the party is as important as the service. People ridicule the party. That's because sometimes the party becomes everything.
It was so much money that was spent at the time. I
Yeah,
had I have great
that's-
memories of
yeah,
it, but the
yes.
money, it just seemed so disproportionate, Mark. It just,
Andrew, that's such a profound statement. It's true about weddings too,
Yeah, true.
And they're wonderful family simchas,
True.
but the cost of weddings has gone out of its mind.
Crazy. I can't for the life of me understand it. My dad had egg salad sandwiches. That would be fine,
Good for your father. And what about Judaism in the home? Was there Shabbat in the home?
No,
Okay.
no.
And you say it like you're disappointed.
I am disappointed. I
In
feel like
retrospect, you wish
I
it-
missed something. I
Yes.
missed something. I
Yes.
did.
So there you are. You go to Tulane.
Yes.
Then you go to Columbia MBA in
MBA.
business school.
Mm-hmm.
And then at what point does, a typical Jewish kid from Westchester begin to get the Jewish bug and begin to get interested in how does that happen, Andrew?
Great question. I finish up, and the whole world was Jewish, right? You're in Westchester, you go on vacations in Florida, you go to Tulane, it's the whole world is Jewish, and it didn't seem to really matter. And my parents kept saying, marry a Jewish girl, so of course I didn't marry a Jewish girl. And it wasn't until 2006, so I'm already into my early 40s, and I turn on the television set. It's CNN, and the Lebanese war with Israel is going on, and they're shooting rockets. And no matter what it was, whether I was reading the newspaper, watching television, it was the fault of Israel. And I felt somehow responsible for this, and I needed to understand what went wrong, and that's when the bug hit me.
Interesting.
I had a passion to learn, and it just sort of came out of nowhere.
So what did you do next?
The next thing I did is I promised myself I would read and study what's going on in Israel and Judaism. And I continued to do that for 3 years until the financial crisis hit. And at that point, I'd had a great career on Wall Street, focusing on the insurance industry. And I thought, it's time for personal stuff. I quit. And they wouldn't let me quit. They said, go away for the summer and come back. I took my older boy to Israel for 8 days.
How was that?
Oh, it was moving. It was moving, and I saw all the key sites.
Roughly,
And
this is what year?
this is 2009.
2009.
Uh-huh.
And you go with your older son.
My older
How many
son.
children do you have?
I have 2 boys,
And what ages are there now?
22 and one just turning 20.
Lovely. And when you took your son to Israel for the first time, he was roughly
15-ish.
15.
Oh no.
And
No, maybe he was 12 or 13, right? Because
Did he
it's
have his bar
06,
mitzvah
yeah.
ceremony
No bar mitzvah. No bar mitzvah.
Not
It's
at all.
Unfortunate, yeah.
does that pain you at all?
It is, and I'm trying to catch up for that, especially when I'm involved in organizations like StandWithUs, which is about educating the youth. And I look at I was like, did I not do a good job? I didn't even educate my sons. And I'm trying to catch up with them now. It's never too late.
That's very interesting. But we will digress for only one moment.
Sure.
If I were to ask your sons what identity they had, if I said to them, are you Jews? What would they say?
I think my older son, Matthew, would say, I'm Jewish. And my younger son, Jackson, is just sort of, it's a historic thing. In fact, one time Jackson went with my in-laws to church when he was a little boy at 5, and he goes, why are we going to church? Are we here to pray for the Jews? So, but Jackson, maybe he'll come along too, I'm hoping.
Very
I'm
interesting.
hoping.
Matthew is the older one?
Yes.
He's the one who goes to Israel with you.
He went to Israel at one time, and I think that
Did it have an
really
impact,
struck
you
him.
think?
Yeah, I think so.
Was that your first trip to Israel?
That was my first
What
trip.
was it like for you?
It was enlightening, and I felt something in the air. I don't know what it was, but I just felt something going to all these historic sites and constantly reading about them so that I understood where I was. It wasn't just, showing up at the Kotel, because by the way, I mean, even the Kotel is not really, that's not where the temple was. It's just the kind of the wall, the retaining wall, and just learning about it and feeling it. It's just so special. I go twice a year now.
You do.
Yeah.
And you go twice a year because?
I think because I love it, and I want to be helpful. I want to get involved. I want to be an advocate. So I'll visit Samaria. I'll come back and I'll educate people about what's going on there. I'll go to the Temple Mount and I'll experience that. I'll come back and educate. StandWithUs has an office there, and I'll meet with them and strategize. And I just love it. And now I'm integrating business there too, which is great.
What does
Tel
that
Aviv.
mean?
So I stayed retired for about 3+ years,
Yes.
and a former client called up and said, "Would you do a project?" And I did it, and I liked it, and I took another, and then I got more clients. I'm enjoying it, but I'm still making room for Judaism and Israel. And that's what's so important to me. But there's venture capital in Tel Aviv. It's one of the capitals of technology and startups. It's so exciting to kind of go out there, spend 3 days in Tel Aviv, get the business done with, and then get to the really, the passion, the real passion.
What is it about Israel that makes it so special for you?
I think one, it's on a couple of levels. The first attraction was the 38+ years of history, with Abraham and then David and on and on. And the second part is the spiritual part. And in my studies, Rabbi Abraham Isaac Kook, who was the first Ashkenazic chief rabbi in Israel in British Mandate Palestine. In reading what he said, he said there's a divine, even in secular Jews, and I'm trying to get more spiritual, but he said even in secular Jews there's a divine spark. And I just thought, wow, a divine spark. There's something going on. I don't know, I can't describe it, but it's spiritual, and I really feel it.
Do you warm to the Israeli people?
I do. I relate to I relate to all peoples, but there's something about the Jewish people that I love. I don't agree with many sometimes with some of the Jewish people, but I love the Jewish people.
They are your family even when you disagree with them.
True.
Yes?
True.
And you want to protect them even if you disagree with them.
Yes. I don't know. I can't explain it, but
It
it's
comes
there.
from somewhere deep inside you.
Yes.
And it came as a surprise to you.
Out of
It
nowhere.
wasn't. You didn't see this coming.
Never.
Isn't that interesting?
Fascinating.
Reflect on that for one moment. You are, Andrew, so different today than you were in your mid-20s and your early 30s. When you think about that, what comes to your mind?
Oh, gosh. I guess it's just the maturing process. I've always been, this is something distinctly Jewish too, just sort of the inquisitiveness, the need to learn, the thirst for knowledge. And that was always a part of me. And I'm so happy that Judaism became a big part of that. And I just, it's just a joy to learn about the Jewish history and the people. And I try to go to different services, whether they're Orthodox or Reform, and I keep growing with it.
That's lovely. Do you at the moment self-identify with any movement?
Not yet.
You're an eclectic Jew.
Yeah, I'm an eclectic. I like that, eclectic. Yeah, I meet with a rabbi at a program called Jewish Renaissance Experience, and we'll look at a different parsha almost every week, and that's the route I'm taking now.
Isn't that fun?
Oh, it's the best. It's the
there
best.
are some people who've never experienced that. If you haven't experienced that, listen to Andrew. It's so much fun, isn't it?
It's fun. It's enlightening. The time just goes right by, and you're a better person afterwards.
Yes.
It helps you with your values.
Absolutely, absolutely. Do you go to services now or not?
I do.
Where?
I'll go.
Different places?
I was at Young Israel of Scarsdale one week. I go back to Temple Israel. I'll go.
And do you bring your children at all?
I'm working on it.
You're working on it. Very good. I understand. Your wife is named June.
June.
And I've met her. She's lovely. Is she supportive of your movement back to Judaism and your embrace of Israel? Or because she's not Jewish, is that hard for her?
I believe that June is supportive, and whatever I want to do, I'm welcome to do it. It may not be her passion, but she supports me, and I appreciate, and I love her for that. But it just may never. You have to accept certain things that
Yes.
are never going to be their passions,
Yes.
and that might not be hers.
I knew about your background. I knew, obviously, I met June. I did want to say, did say to myself, I can ask you a couple of questions I don't normally get to ask a guest.
Absolutely.
Because one of the biggest issues facing American Jewish life is that we have a very high rate of intermarriage.
Yes.
And depending on where you look, within the non-Orthodox community, it may be 70%. And there are many Jews who marry somebody not Jewish, and they work to create a Jewish home, even though there is a non-Jewish spouse. And this is even whether the spouse does not convert. If the spouse converts, they're two Jews. But if the spouse remains not a Jew, and sometimes they're involved in a different religious tradition, sometimes you often hear people say, well, I've married somebody who's not Jewish, but my spouse is nothing. They're not committed to any other religious tradition. But now there's a problem about how you work out the real life issues. And there are real life issues that an intermarried couple faces. For example, and I want you to speak to this.
Sure.
You have two sons. In an ideal Jewish situation, you'd want them to have 4 Jewish grandparents. They don't. Your children have 2 Jewish grandparents.
Right.
And 2 non-Jewish grandparents. I'm assuming the 2 non-Jewish grandparents are also lovely people,
Right.
as June is lovely. Okay. And they have every right to their grandchildren, as your parents have to their grandchildren. And so issues arise. There are holidays. There are things that may mean something to your in-laws, which might not even mean something to June, but adult children do things for their parents as well as kids do something for their parents. So as you think about it, how do you feel you have done, and do you have any advice for anybody who may be watching who is either considering about to enter an intermarriage or already is and struggling with issues? Are there ways in which you feel you've been successful? And quite honestly, as you look at your own life, and you're a very honest guy.
I am an honest guy.
Are there ways in which you feel you wish you had done better?
Okay, so I'm going to try to break that into pieces, a few distinct pieces. I think one of the true wonders of being Jewish is the values and the culture. And that's the one thing I got. I think the religious education was too watered down for me. And unfortunately, June's family, they have very good values. So our boys are good people. Where did I fall short? I think when a young boy shows up in the house and it's December and there's a menorah in the house and there's a Christmas tree and you're getting a bunch of presents, and where do you get more presents? And it just, and then you just really have no sense of the history and the meaning of religion. And I think there's so many, sort of the parshas of the Torah and all the learning that goes on there. I think they miss stuff there. And I think that's tough. Again, I'm not giving up. I want them to learn, and I'm going to work with them to learn. So any suggestions? I think first you've got to bring good values into the house. And then secondly, I think a religion is good. I think there's a lot of meaning. There's a richness to it. And I see that in my Jewish friends that have a lot of spirituality. And so if it's possible, bring them up with Judaism. One spouse should convert. And if I had it to do over again, then I would have brought them up with Judaism. I think it would have been good for them. I'm proud of what I did, but I could have been better.
But that's true for all of us.
Yeah.
Would June have been comfortable doing that?
It might have been a battle, but if that were my passion, then I
may
think
have
I
worked
would
it
have
out with her.
convinced her.
I
Yes,
see.
I think I would have
Okay,
convinced her.
so really, as you look back, if there was anything you might say, I wish I would do differently, it was that you didn't make an issue with June about what you do with your children when you had the chance to do so.
Yes, and remarkably, Mark, it was an indifference. Complete indifference.
I understand.
I don't know how it changed.
It's a miracle.
It is a miracle.
It's a wonderful story.
It is a miracle.
On the political spectrum, and I'm now talking not Democrat, Republican, I'm talking about the Israeli scene, Jewish issues. You lean left, you lean right. Where do you lean?
I guess you would call it, I'd like to call it center, and let others interpret where they
Good for
see
you.
that.
Good for you.
But you know, I am supportive of the Jewish people in Samaria and living there.
Because?
Well, on two levels. Biblically, I think this is the Jewish land. And also if you look at modern history and if you go from starting with Balfour all the way to Oslo, there's nothing that says the Jews aren't entitled to that land until what President Obama did, which in my view is unforgivable. But
Namely?
Resolution 2334.
As he was leaving office.
As he was leaving office.
And remind everyone what that is.
Okay, so Resolution 2334 defines the settlement areas, and I don't even know if that's the right word, the settled areas of Jews across the Green Line, which in 1967, after the war, was land that the Jews took, that Israel took after they were attacked from all of their Arab neighbors. And under international law, when you're attacked and you recover the land of the attackers, that's your land. And then I'll go over to the Oslo Accords, the early 1990s. Israel agreed that they would give territories to the Arab peoples in exchange for peace. Territories. So now we have, and that was under Resolution 242. Back in 1967. Now we have Resolution 2334. President Obama said he had Israel's back, but this resolution says that the territories are now occupied. That wasn't a word in Resolution 242. That's not a correct word. It's a false narrative. And now this legitimizes a false narrative. And it's so disturbing to me that President Obama would have gone behind the scenes and mobilized countries to do this, and then when the vote came to just stand there and not veto it, as all administrations would have prior to him, is just unforgivable. You can debate Iran, you can debate Syria, you can debate Benghazi. I'll debate all day. This is not debatable in my book. So I gave you a long answer, but that's how I see it.
2334 says that every single settlement on the east side of the Green Line is a flagrant violation of international law. And that includes East Jerusalem,
yes, that
the
too.
old city of Jerusalem, the Western Wall, the Kotel, the Temple Mount, as well as Efrat, Ma'ale Adumim,
Breaks my heart.
Modi'in,
Breaks my
let
heart.
alone, the as well as, I should say, the Jewish communities further into the West Bank, what people also call Judea Samaria. But I don't think that people understand how
detrimental it is.
Yes.
I mean, and think about it too. Israel entered into peace agreements with Egypt and Jordan, and it was always land for peace. But if this is not Israel's land, you have nothing to negotiate with anymore. It's horrible, horrible.
Mm-hmm. By the way, you and I probably would not even be happy with the construct to get peace. Israel must give up land. My own sense is I never understood why it shouldn't be peace for peace. And now let's figure out what we want to do with the land. But it's not land for peace. However, that horse has left the barn. That's the way the issue was framed. It's the way Oslo was framed. And it's interesting, most people do not know. May I test you? It's not fair.
Please test
May I
me. If I'm
test
wrong,
you?
I'm wrong.
Very good for you.
It's okay.
Do you know the initials PLO?
Palestinian Liberation Organization.
Now, you understand, I'll have to do teshuvah for what I just did to you. It's not fair what I just did for you.
It's okay.
But what you said is what 90% of American Jews will say.
Okay.
PLO stands for?
Palestinian Liberation Organization. Let me think if I got it wrong. So let me just.
You got it wrong.
Let me just make. Palestinian.
Can I help you?
Please, please.
Palestinian Liberation Organization implies a liberation movement, a people's movement. PLO never stood for Palestinian. It stood for Palestine.
Okay.
It was the Palestine Liberation Organization. It was not to liberate a people. It was to liberate a territory.
The entire territory.
Exactly right. And then the question is this. What year was the PLO created? When was the Six-Day War?
67.
When was the PLO created?
Probably right around that time. There were no Palestinians.
Most people think that the PLO was created to liberate the West Bank, and therefore the PLO was created after the Six-Day War. In fact, the PLO was created in 1964.
Okay, right before. Okay.
Not right before. That's 3 years before.
Right.
There was no West Bank. There were no Jews.
Nothing.
Israel wasn't allowed on the bank. Jews were not allowed to go to the old city. We were not allowed to go to the Western Wall. And what's interesting, the Palestine Liberation Organization had a charter. And the charter defined the territory it wanted to liberate. What did it say about the West Bank? It said, we want to liberate all of Palestine except for the West Bank and Gaza. The Palestine Liberation Organization was created in 1964 to liberate the rest of Israel.
Right, because that was all Jordanian territory.
Exactly right. And Egyptian and Gaza. Anyway, most people don't understand that. And then we had the Six-Day War. And do you know what Khartoum is?
Educate me.
So after the Six-Day War, Levi Eshkol was prime minister.
Remember it. Very controversial,
That's
too.
correct.
He didn't want to fight them necessarily.
That's right.
Yeah.
Very good. So that's June. The war takes 6 days.
A miracle.
We end up in control of the West Bank, which includes East Jerusalem and the Old City. We're in control of the Golan Heights, from which the Syrians were using as a staging ground to fire rockets into the Hula Valley. And we end up with Gaza. And the Israelis said, well, with some Israelis who said, annex the whole place immediately. But the majority of Israelis said, you know, we didn't ask for this. We don't need it. We would like it. But so this is what we'll do. If the Arab world, because it wasn't Palestinians at that time, if the Arab world makes peace with us, you can have it all back. When I say all back, we're going to keep Jerusalem.
Maybe
We're going to keep the Golan Heights.
Right.
But the rest of it, you can have it back. Tomorrow, you can have it back.
All yours.
Just one thing.
Peace.
You stop the war. But when did the war start?
What's that?
When did the war start?
Well, I think it's eternal, but maybe you could
You
call
are right.
it 1948.
1948.
Yeah.
Andrew, you're exactly right. It wasn't that the Six-Day War was a new war.
No.
It was the next battle
Right.
in an ongoing war.
Right.
So the Israelis said, stop. Just stop. If you stop and you make peace, you can have all the land back, virtually all the land back.
Everything.
So the Arab League goes to Khartoum, which is the capital of the Sudan.
And they have
And
a
at
conference,
Khartoum,
right.
they have a conference. They have a conference the last week of August. The war's in June. They're meeting the last week of August. It's like the next day. The conference ends on September 1, and on September 1, the Arab League utters the infamous 3 no's. No negotiation, no recognition, no peace. And Andrew, you and I have been living in that world to this very day.
Forever.
And I don't understand, and this is the next thing I want you to speak about, because I know it concerns you. Why do you think it is that so many American Jews, good people, who have liberal values, who want good for people in general,
Yeah, really good
why is it
people.
so many American Jews are not sympathetic to the plight of Israel in its conflict with the Palestinians, and in fact support the Palestinian cause over Israel's cause? Why? And you know you've seen this.
Great question. Oh, too many times. And they are good people at heart.
That's
They're
right.
good people at heart.
It-
And what's even more remarkable is if you even add on to the key modern historical points that you brought up. Ehud Barak, 2000, take East Jerusalem, take the West Bank. Just say this is a Jewish state and that there's no right to return. No, 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 and no. Ehud Olmert, same thing, 2008. And yet these people continue to blame Israel. And I think about this all the time. And I have two theses that I'll run by you.
Please.
The first one actually is fascinating. I was reading it around Yom Kippur. Maybe you know Professor Weiss from Harvard. And
She was sitting in that chair just a couple of days ago.
I like that. Very brilliant woman. I'd love to meet her someday. She wrote a piece about when you're repenting for your sins around the holidays, and you really want to do right, some of the Jewish people are taking it to a level that's unrealistic. They're taking it too far, to the point that there's so maybe, Israel is not perfect, right? We all make mistakes. And as a nation, while I think this is the greatest democracy in the world, Israel, they make mistakes. And any micro mistake that they make gets blown out of proportion to a level that's completely unacceptable. And I think about it. It's almost like when I was a kid, my teachers told me, when you go to an interview, put your best face on. And yet these people want to put the worst face on Israel, and I think it's their way of repenting. So that's my one.
Repenting for what?
For some sins that I think are not even sins. I don't even know what they are, but they're repenting for something, and they really, tikkun olam, they want to heal the world, and they believe this. They're good people at heart, but I think that they're misguided, in my view. The second is a little more general, and some Jews call other Jews self-hating Jews. And, I've met people and they're involved, these are not my favorite organizations, the New Israel Fund, J Street. I'll say it, they're misguided, but they're good people. And I don't think that they're self-hating Jews, but they're they take the view of, if the world sees something wrong, we have to fix ourselves. The world thinks that we're doing something wrong, we have to fix it. And the world has always thought the Jews did something wrong. And I don't think we have to fix it. I think the world needs to fix it. It's time for the world to say, God damn it, these Jewish people are good people. They have good values. There's only, 13 or 14 million of them left after every generation trying to annihilate them from Abraham on. It's just kind of a feeling we need to fix ourselves. And I don't understand it. As Elie Wiesel said when I was interviewing, and I interviewed him when I was in college, he came onto campus. He said, with questions, I only have more questions. I don't have answers. And that's something that just will always be a mystery to me.
Mm-hmm. That's beautifully said. You've done a lot of work with Stand With Us and
Yes.
against the BDS movement.
Yes.
First of all, have you had specific interaction on college campuses at all?
Yes, I'll go to presentations and I'll talk to students. And I probably should start doing some presenting myself, because I think I've educated myself to a level on the history where I can talk.
What's your sense of the BDS movement, and how serious a problem do you feel it is?
Oh, it's gotten so toxic, and I think that they're having an impact in delegitimizing Israel. Young people today, think that Israel is an apartheid state, and they don't understand it. You know, I had a young man. This is part of my process with my son. You know, he's at Fordham University, and he has a buddy whose mother is not Jewish and his father is Jewish, very similar. And the young man, you know, we're reading from the Haggadah, and we're going through stuff, and he said, "Why is this happening? Because Israel is doing illegal things?" And I had to teach him. And this is the mentality of not only non-Jews, but Jews. And these are our future senators and lawyers and leaders. And the message is terrible.
Yes.
So I go onto the campuses, I'll talk to students, and I work with student representatives at Stand With Us, where we have college campus representatives. About 7 years ago, we started high school. About a year and a half ago, we got into the junior high schools. We have a social media forum. And I try to get involved in all of these things because it's just so important, not from a political standpoint. So, you know, I may view things one way and others may view them another, but just so that the kids, the young people today, know the truth. Mm-hmm. And the truth is very powerful. Mm-hmm. That's the most powerful tool that we have. Mm-hmm. And that's what Stand With Us does.
Mm-hmm. You know, there's an issue in general on college campuses today, in general, where there seems to be a lack of tolerance for students and even administrations to permit those whom they disagree with to speak.
Yeah, it's amazing.
When I was young, it was done to us. As a liberal kid growing up, I was just a plain old liberal Jew like everybody else.
Right.
What you didn't want is those, we didn't use the same terminology, but those on the right to stop us from speaking. I fear now I am seeing those on the left preventing those who are pro-Israel from speaking. You know, I know you in your own program spoke with Danny Danone.
Yes.
I was at Columbia University. I'm a graduate of Columbia.
Right.
By the way, I'm pre-67, 68. So I come a generation earlier. There was a sea change in 68.
Big time.
But Danone comes to Columbia, and while he's speaking at Students Support Israel, SSI, there's a large contingent of Columbia undergrads and grads and Palestinians there who are giving Danone grief. And Danny Danone handles it magnificently. He keeps saying to the groups, and they're strategically placed all over the auditorium, I know you're going to get up in a moment. Don't leave. Stay. Talk to me. Wow. Tell me what's on your mind. Let me have a chance to answer you. And maybe you'll convince me that
and then they walk
they
out.
Wouldn't none of them would stay.
They walk out.
They would walk out. And I've seen on UC Berkeley, campuses all over America, not every campus, but on campuses, you have people who will not permit the Jewish perspective to be spoken. And that's part of this BDS movement. And my question for you is, do you worry that while no one could destroy Israel with military arms, this diplomatic attack on Israel's legitimacy is a very subtle and difficult enemy to face?
So real, so real. And as part of my studies, you look back in Jewish history, and the Babylonians took over the first temple. The Jews were abolished, and then we have the second temple, and the Romans destroy it. And here we are. We have this miracle. I love reading about what led up to the Balfour Declaration and what happened. It's just a miracle, and it would be so easy to make that go away. And to your point, BDS at the forefront will demonize and delegitimize to a point that maybe there won't be in Israel. It's happened.
Do you worry?
Every night I go home, and again, I don't know why. I go home and I think about how horrible that is. That's when Resolution 2334 was passed, I was so upset, so disappointed, because it's part of it. It's all intertwined. This false narrative of the occupation, and that's what BDS is fighting. This occupation, as if these peoples are being beaten and enslaved and mistreated. I mean, they're living a life that's better than anywhere in the Middle East. They have equal rights. By
the way, I want to sort of make sure we are not misleading.
Please.
Inside Israel, Arabs, Palestinians are citizens of the state.
Yes.
I don't know that they are treated exactly the same as Jewish citizens, but that it comes close. And Israel is very sensitive, more so all the time. There are NGOs in Israel which hold the Israeli government's feet to the fire. The State of Israel's Supreme Court votes overwhelmingly, time and time again, on behalf of Arabs who bring cases from the West Bank against Jews.
Amona,
right.
Yeah.
So, but those are Israeli citizens.
Right.
There's an Israeli justice of the Supreme Court. There's an Arab party in the Knesset. Many
Right.
Jews don't even know that. That's different than the Arab population on the West Bank. The Arab population on the West Bank lives autonomously. Most Jews don't understand that. They have their own communities, their own cities, their own shopping malls, their own wealthy districts. They have their own press.
And their own government.
Their own government. They can vote. If the Palestinians don't hold an election, it's not Israel's fault. So Abbas is in the 10th year of a 4-year term. That's not Israel's fault. But they have a government, they have a police, they have a television, they have a news, they have a bank. They run their own society. But there is a but. They do not have military control of their lives. And the State of Israel maintains the right for the IDF to go into any Arab community, town, village, city, looking for terrorists if Israel believes there is a threat. Israel does not do this willy-nilly.
No.
Israel doesn't go into Palestinian communities just to make trouble.
No.
Or to humiliate.
No.
But Israel does have the right. It maintains the right for a military control. And in that sense, every one of us has to understand the Palestinian can say, we're not free. We are freer than most Arabs living anywhere in the Middle East. But we are not free in the sense that an Israeli is free, whether an Israeli lives on the West Bank or inside Israel proper at the moment.
I guess, fair point, but when you think about that military presence, what do they need their own military for?
And why is our presence there?
To defend ourselves
if there
against
were peace,
terrorists.
would we be there?
It would be nowhere, exactly.
Yes.
So I almost, I had an interesting experience. I have a friend in Hebron, and I'll stay over at his home. One day we went up to Tel Rameda, and I think I even saw you up there on a segment for JBS. It was awesome. And you're looking at these Second Temple era mikvahs,
yes.
and you're looking at stone roads
yes.
and walls that are 4,000 years old. Abraham was there, David was there. They were walking down those paths. And I go up there with my friend, and 5 young Arabs in their 20s come up. One was a journalist, and they were, they were confrontational, but not in a physical way. They're like, "Why are you ruining our lives? Why are you making us miserable, treating us like animals?" And so we had a debate, and the young woman, who was probably around 22 years old, I was trying to talk to her about modernity, a lot of the things we're talking about, and we agreed to have an email dialogue. And here's some of my impressions. Here was a young woman who was very well educated. She was very pretty. She had very nice clothing on, and she was living a rich life. Now, as we went into that email dialogue, it was remarkable how she had all of this from her university there in Hebron, all of these false narratives about how Israel came about. And I would go back, and she would bring something back at me. And finally, after a year plus of this, they were having the stabbings and the car runovers and so forth. And I said, Yasmin, how do you feel about these stabbings? And she goes, I feel this is very okay. This is an apartheid regime, and it is very okay to do that. So I go full circle back to the military presence. If this is very okay, you can't avoid that. And instead of boycotting and divesting and sanctioning because we're forced to have a military presence, why don't we address the fact that the terrorism has to stop? And then I think the Israelis will evaporate. They'll gladly go away. It's a tough issue.
That is quite a story.
Yeah.
This email dialogue you
have.
have.
Yeah, and just a lovely girl.
A lovely girl who still says to you, after a year of emailing with you, Andrew, still says, it's okay.
Very okay.
It's very okay for Arab Palestinians to stab Jews in the streets.
Car ram, take hatchets out. I mean, just.
And by the way, even Israeli Arabs were involved in this.
Oh, yeah. Still, even a couple weeks ago.
And why? And when you say to her, but Jasmine, your Arabs in Israel have citizenship, vote, have social services, have members on the Supreme Court, have doctors and lawyers. What does she say? How does she then say to you, it's an apartheid state?
She's poisoned.
So it doesn't matter what the truth is.
It doesn't matter. It's all about the Nakba and how she's living in Hebron, by the way, better than most kids, or at least on a par with kids in New York and New Jersey. The Nakba forced her out to that part of the world. I mean, and I kind of go back and I look at, again, I've studied the history. These peoples didn't live there for so many generations. So I don't know, some of them came there right after Balfour, or even back to Rothschild at the turn of the century when they were just building up Jewish farmland.
They were looking for work.
They were looking for work.
Yes.
So this whole false narrative of the displacement is so poisonous.
Okay, and
they
yet
can't get over it.
You couldn't get past it. You couldn't get past the false narrative she's been brought up with. You couldn't convince. There's nothing you could show
I wrote
her.
her. Oh, I took educate. I
But
wrote
there's
her.
nothing.
Nothing. Every fact had a counter.
Okay, isn't this the tragedy?
Oh, it's heartbreaking. It's hard, and that's why I get involved in these organizations because I just want them to know the truth. I don't want to make things up. I just want the truth to be there, and I want people to make their own minds up. But when they're poisoned, Mark, I don't know. I don't know how.
What you describe is what frightens me the most. What frightens me the most is, and this is a Jewish notion, it's also a Western notion. If there's a controversy, you sit down across the table and you go over the facts, and you also acknowledge, you can read the facts a certain way and I'll read the facts, but there are certain facts. And ultimately, we're looking for a way to end the conflict. The human tragedy that I keep expressing here on JBS is the human tragedy. The Palestinian people is captive to a Palestinian leadership that refuses to look at reality, accept reality, and most of all, make a compromise. They will,
Never.
At the moment, there's nobody to make a compromise with. And if that's true, it's hard to tell Israel what to do. Israel has a right to do everything it can to protect itself. And of all the things that frighten me, and where you say you go home every night and you're upset.
Yes.
What upsets me is that the diplomatic movement throughout Eastern Europe, throughout Western Europe, the EU, throughout portions of Australia and New Zealand, and even inside the United States, of all the things that threaten Israel, that's what threatens Israel the most. And you'll tell me if you agree or disagree. I feel baseline, we're dealing with a systemic, hideous anti-Semitism.
Oh, yeah.
That grabs people in a way that makes them unable to look at evidence or truth or fairness. All they want to do is demonize the Jewish state, which is a way of demonizing the Jewish people, you say.
I just to add to what you're saying, because I completely agree with it, I think it's an existential issue. It's an anti-Semitism that's been there, if you go back, toward Jesus Christ and the Gospels, and the Jewish religion disagrees with who the Messiah was, and I think from there the Gospels came out with some things that unfortunately people take a negative view of Jews. It goes from generation to England and the blood libels. I mean, imagine the blood libels, taking little children and doing things with them that are just, you can't even describe how bad that is. And now, we had a brief moment there after the Holocaust. You kill 6 million Jewish people, and I think even the hatred, people have to take a step back and say, my God, what have I done? What have I done to these people? This is inhumane. And now we're, these are my grandparents, my parents are of that era, and now my generation just kind of knows the people from that generation, and then the next generation has no touch. And so here's this other generation, and they say, well, maybe my grandparents were right. It's almost like we're coming into the next cycle of it, and they're saying, yeah, my grandparents were right. These Jewish people are so bad. Look what they're doing to these poor, innocent Palestinians. Forget the fact that they've tried to annihilate the country, multiple times. That doesn't matter. These are the victims now. And I really do agree with you that it's pure anti-Semitism. It's not anti-Zionism.
Okay. So if you had to summarize what you're trying to do, what you'd love to be able to do, where you're putting your efforts now, as as the Jewish community is meeting you through L'chaim, what is it you want them to understand? Because what you're doing is really what you hope many people, many Jews in our community try to do. What is it that you now, what's the work that you are devoting your life to in terms of the Jewish people?
I think seek the truth, and through the truth we can preserve the Jewish culture and Israel most importantly, because if we don't have the truth, you've expressed the concern that we could be gone. It could be there could be no Israel, and so I really want to get the truth out there, and let's have a dialogue. Let's talk to the people. I'll talk to other Jews at J Street and New Israel Fund. I'm happy to sit at a table with them and have that discussion, and I'll talk to Palestinians as I did with this young lady, and it's just. Hopefully you convince one person. It's the butterfly effect, right? The butterfly flaps its wings, and then it does something in the air, and that's what my hope is. You have to have hope. There's some tough days, but you got to have hope.
You are lovely.
Thank you.
And you're doing,
it's a pleasure.
You're really doing things for the Jewish people. I have great respect for what you do. You must come back and sit in this chair again.
It was a pleasure.
Thank you, Edward. Pleasure from me. The thoughts of Andrew Kligerman, one of the unsung heroes of contemporary Jewish life, who's making a real contribution in many ways to the state of Israel and to our Jewish future. As always, I invite you to be in touch with me with any thoughts or comments you may have to any of the ideas expressed by Andrew, please email me, write me, post on our Facebook wall, or tweet me. I hope to hear from many of you. Until the next time, I'm Mark Golub. L'chaim, my friends, to life.
L'chaim is a presentation of Jewish education in media.
We would be pleased to send a complimentary DVD of this program to anyone who wishes to support JBS, the Jewish Broadcasting Service, with a tax-deductible gift of $36, double chai or more, to the nonprofit organization Jewish Education in Media. Simply visit the JBS homepage and click on the Donate button to make a donation by PayPal or your credit card. And please indicate the program for which you would like a DVD. Or you can send your tax-deductible check made out to Jem, Post Office Box 180, Riverdale Station, Bronx, New York 10471. And again, please remember to indicate which program you would like to receive with our compliments. And we thank you for your kind support.